The morning of September 15th started like any other Saturday in Millbrook, Connecticut, until Denise Martinez received a phone call that would turn her daughter's wedding day into something she never could have anticipated. What seemed like a perfect autumn ceremony was about to become a battleground where old wounds would be reopened, harsh words would be exchanged, and a long-buried secret would finally surface in the most unexpected way possible. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Denise stood in front of her bedroom mirror, carefully applying the final touches of lipstick. The soft pink shade complemented the navy blue dress she'd chosen for Emma's wedding. Elegant, but not attention-grabbing, exactly as the mother of the bride should be. Outside her window, the maple trees displayed their full autumn glory, painting the neighborhood in brilliant reds and golds. It was gonna be a beautiful day. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Emma's name appeared on the screen, and Denise smiled as she answered. "Morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "Mom, I'm freaking out a little," Emma's voice came through, breathless with excitement and nerves. "The flowers just arrived at the venue and they're absolutely gorgeous." Mrs. Chen outdid herself with the arrangements. Denise felt her chest warm with pride. At 26, Emma had grown into such a capable, independent woman. She'd planned this entire wedding mostly on her own, working around her demanding job as a pediatric nurse, while her fiancé Jake finished his residency at Hartford Hospital. They were both hard-working, genuine people who clearly adored each other. "I'm sure everything looks perfect, honey. You've put so much thought into every detail." "I just wish," Emma's voice trailed off, and Denise knew exactly what she was thinking. "I know. I wish things were different too." The elephant in the room, or rather, the elephant who would be in the church in a few hours, was Marcus Thompson, Emma's biological father, Denise's ex-husband, the man who had walked out on them when Emma was just 8 years old, claiming he wasn't ready for the responsibilities of family life. The man who had reappeared 3 years ago, suddenly interested in rebuilding a relationship with his daughter now that she was successful and accomplished. Denise had watched Emma struggle with the decision of whether to invite him. Part of her daughter yearned for her father's approval and presence on her special day. The other part remembered the years of broken promises, missed birthdays, and the way Marcus had made her feel like she wasn't worth staying for. "He promised he'd be on his best behavior," Emma said quietly. "Jake thinks having him there might give me some closure, you know? Like maybe I can finally put all that behind me." Denise spit back the words she really wanted to say. Marcus Thompson was a master manipulator who had spent their entire marriage making himself look good while tearing down everyone around him. He'd been a successful insurance broker with a charming smile and a way of making people believe he was always the victim of circumstances beyond his control. When he left, he'd somehow managed to paint Denise as the controlling, unreasonable ex-wife who was keeping him from his daughter, conveniently leaving out the part where he'd chosen to move to California and start a new life without looking back. "Whatever happens today, Emma, just remember that you are surrounded by people who love you unconditionally. Jake's family adores you, all our friends will be there cheering for you, and I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become." "Thanks, Mom. I love you so much. I'll see you at the church. I'll be the one crying happy tears in the front row." After hanging up, Denise sat on the edge of her bed and took a deep breath. She'd been dreading this day for months, not because of the wedding itself. She was thrilled about Emma marrying Jake, but because she knew Marcus would find a way to make it about himself. He always did. She grabbed her purse and car keys, taking one last look in the mirror. At 52, Denise felt she'd aged well. Her dark hair was streaked with silver now, which she wore as a badge of honor, rather than covering with dye. The lines around her eyes told the story of countless nights staying up with a sick child, years of working double shifts as a paralegal to make ends meet, and the gradual return of genuine laughter after the divorce was finalized. The drive to St. Catherine's Church took her through the heart of Millbrook, past the elementary school where Emma had played soccer, the library where they'd spent countless Saturday mornings during those lean years, and the small park where Denise had taught her daughter to ride a bike after Marcus claimed he was too busy with work to help. Those memories didn't sting anymore. Time and perspective had shown Denise that Marcus's absence, while painful for Emma, had actually freed them both to build something stronger together. Emma had learned independence and resilience. Denise had discovered her own strength and eventually found contentment in her quiet life. The church parking lot was already filling up when she arrived. She recognized Jake's parents' car, Emma's college roommates, and several of her own friends who had become like aunts to Emma over the years. These were the people who had shown up, who had formed the real family that mattered. Inside the church, the afternoon light streamed through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across wooden pews that smelled faintly of lemon polish and old hymnal pages. Mrs. Chen's floral arrangements were indeed spectacular, cascading white roses and ivy with touches of deep burgundy that perfectly matched the autumn theme. Denise was greeting Jake's mother, Patricia, when she heard the familiar laugh that made her stomach clench. Marcus had arrived. He looked exactly the same as he had 3 years ago when he'd shown up at Emma's college graduation. Still handsome in that practiced way of his, still wearing expensive suits, still commanding attention when he walked into a room. His new wife, Stephanie, clung to his arm like a decorative accessory. She was probably 10 years younger than Denise, with the kind of highlighted blonde hair and perfect makeup that suggested she'd never had to choose between buying groceries and paying the electric bill. "Denise," Marcus called out, his voice carrying that false warmth he used when he wanted something. "You look wonderful." "Doesn't she look wonderful, Stephanie?" Stephanie offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Lovely," she said in a voice that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. "Marcus," Denise replied evenly, "thank you for coming. It means a lot to Emma." "Of course I came. She's my daughter." The way he said it, with that slight emphasis on my, was clearly intended to remind everyone present of his biological claim to Emma, as if genetics alone made him a father. Patricia, bless her, smoothly inserted herself into the conversation. "The church looks beautiful, doesn't it? Emma has such wonderful taste." "She must get that from her mother." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He'd never liked being reminded that Denise had been the one to actually raise Emma, to shape her into the remarkable woman she'd become. "Well, she gets her determination from the Thompson side," he said with a laugh that sounded forced. "My family has always been ambitious, driven. It's in the blood." Denise felt her hands clench into fists, but she forced herself to remain calm. This was Emma's day, and she wouldn't let Marcus bait her into an argument. The next hour passed in a blur of final preparations and guests arriving. Denise tried to stay focused on the joy of the occasion, watching Jake's nervous excitement as he waited at the altar, seeing Emma's college friends tear up when they first glimpsed her in her wedding dress, feeling the warmth of community as their chosen family gathered to celebrate. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. But Marcus's presence cast a shadow over everything. He positioned himself prominently in conversations, making sure everyone knew he was the father of the bride. He told stories about Emma's childhood that bore little resemblance to reality, painting himself as the devoted dad who had somehow been kept away by circumstances beyond his control. "She was always such a daddy's girl," Denise heard him telling a group of Jake's relatives. "We had this special bond, you know. I taught her everything. How to throw a baseball, how to drive, how to stand up for herself. It breaks my heart that we lost so many years together." Denise wanted to scream. Marcus had never taught Emma to throw a baseball. She'd learned that from Coach Rodriguez in Little League. He hadn't taught her to drive. Denise had done that during lunch breaks from work, squeezing in practice sessions whenever she could find 30 free minutes. And standing up for herself? Emma had learned that lesson the hard way, watching her mother rebuild their lives from scratch after being abandoned. The ceremony began at precisely 3 o'clock, and despite all her worries, Denise felt her heart soar as the first notes of the processional music filled the church. Emma appeared at the back of the aisle, radiant in her grandmother's vintage lace dress that they'd spent weeks altering together. She looked like a vision of grace and happiness, her dark eyes sparkling as she spotted Jake waiting for her at the altar. Marcus had positioned himself to walk Emma down the aisle, naturally. Denise watched from her seat in the front pew as father and daughter made their way forward, trying to focus on Emma's glowing face rather than the self-satisfied expression Marcus wore. He nodded and smiled at guests as if he were the star of the show, rather than simply the escort for the real star. When Father O'Brien asked who was giving Emma away, Marcus spoke up loudly and clearly. "Her mother and I do," he announced, though Denise noticed he said "I," with particular emphasis, as if he deserved equal credit for the woman Emma had become. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Jake's vows brought tears to everyone's eyes, including Emma's. And when she spoke about finding her soulmate and building a life based on trust and mutual support, Denise couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Emma had learned what real love looked like, even without a strong male role model in her formative years. She'd figured it out on her own, through observation and instinct, and the strength that came from overcoming disappointment. After the ceremony, guests moved to the reception at the Millbrook Country Club. The venue was perfect. Autumn decorations throughout, a string quartet playing softly in the background, and tables arranged around a spacious dance floor. Emma and Jake had worked hard to afford this celebration, and every detail reflected their personalities and values. During the cocktail hour, Denise mingled with friends and family, accepting compliments on how beautiful Emma looked and how well the whole event was organized. She was talking with her sister Rosa about the floral arrangements when she heard Marcus's voice rising above the general conversation nearby. "A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. You know, it's funny how some people try to rewrite history," he was saying to a group that included several of Jake's extended family members. "I've heard some stories today about Emma's childhood that are just completely false. The truth is, I was very involved in raising her. Very hands-on. But after the divorce, well, let's just say some people can be vindictive when it comes to custody arrangements." Denise felt her blood pressure spike. Rosa grabbed her arm gently, recognizing the warning signs. "Don't," Rosa whispered. "This is Emma's day. Don't let him drag you into his games." But Marcus wasn't finished. His voice carried clearly across the room as he continued his revisionist version of their family history. "I wanted joint custody, 50-50, but the courts in Connecticut tend to favor mothers, you know? And Denise, well, she made it very difficult for me to maintain a relationship with Emma, moved to different apartments without telling me, changed phone numbers, that sort of thing. I spent years trying to stay connected, but eventually I had to accept that maybe it was better for Emma if I stepped back until she was old enough to make her own decisions about having a relationship with me." Denise's hands trembled as she set down her champagne glass. Every word was a carefully crafted lie designed to make him look like the victim and her look like the villain. The truth was that Marcus had disappeared voluntarily, leaving no forwarding address when he moved to Los Angeles. He'd changed his own phone number and made no effort to contact Emma for birthdays, holidays, or school events. When he finally reached out 3 years ago, it was because his new marriage had given him stepchildren, and suddenly he was interested in being seen as a family man. "I sent child support regularly, of course," Marcus continued, his voice taking on that wounded tone he used so effectively. "Even when I was struggling financially, I always made sure Emma was taken care of. But financial support isn't the same as being able to be there for the important moments, you know? Missing her school plays, her graduation, her first heartbreak, that's time I'll never get back." That was the final straw. Rosa tried to hold her back, but Denise had reached her breaking point. "Excuse me," she said, stepping into the circle of listeners. Her voice was calm but carried an edge that made several people turn to look. "I'm sorry, but I think there might be some confusion about the custody arrangements." Marcus's face flushed slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Denise, I don't think this is the time or place to get into ancient history." "You're absolutely right," she replied smoothly. "Ancient history shouldn't be discussed at Emma's wedding. So perhaps you could stop telling people that you sent child support, when the court records clearly show that payments stopped after the first 6 months. And maybe you could stop claiming that I kept you away from Emma when you were the one who moved across the country without leaving a forwarding address." An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Stephanie appeared at Marcus's elbow, her face tight with embarrassment. Marcus, maybe we should, she started. No, it's fine, Marcus said, his charm flickering but still in place. I understand that divorce can create different perspectives on what happened. People remember things differently. The important thing is that I'm here now, and Emma and I have rebuilt our relationship. His ability to deflect and redirect was masterful, Denise had to admit. Even when caught in outright lies, he could somehow make it seem like it was just a difference of opinion, just two people remembering the same events differently. But Jake's Uncle Robert, a retired family court judge, had been listening to the exchange with increasing interest. Different perspectives are one thing, he said quietly, but court records are pretty objective. Child support payments are documented. Custody arrangements are filed with the state. If there's a discrepancy in the stories, the paperwork would clear it up pretty quickly. Marcus's smile became more strained. Well, like I said, the legal system isn't always fair to fathers. Sometimes it's easier to start fresh than to keep fighting a losing battle. Emma appeared at that moment, having finished taking photos with Jake's grandparents. She looked radiant and happy, completely unaware of the tension that had developed among the adults. Dad, there you are. I've been looking for you. We're about to do family photos, and the photographer wants to get some shots with both sides of the family. Marcus immediately transformed back into the doting father, beaming at Emma and placing a possessive hand on her shoulder. Of course, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss it for the world. As they walked toward the photographer's setup, Denise heard Marcus lean down to whisper something to Emma that made her laugh. The sound twisted in Denise's chest. This was exactly what she'd been dreading. Marcus swooping in to take credit for Emma's happiness, while simultaneously undermining the foundation that had actually made that happiness possible. The photo session was torture. Marcus positioned himself prominently in every shot, his arm around Emma, his smile practiced and perfect. When the photographer asked for a picture of just Emma with her parents, Marcus stepped forward immediately while Denise hesitated, unsure if she belonged in the same frame as the man who was working so hard to erase her contributions to their daughter's life. Come on, Mom, Emma called out, reaching for both her parents. I want both of you in this one. So Denise smiled and posed, trying to project happiness while standing next to the man who had spent the afternoon telling lies about their shared history. The photographer snapped away, capturing what would look like a happy, reunited family to anyone who didn't know the real story. After the photos, dinner was served. Denise found herself seated at the head table, unfortunately positioned where she could see Marcus holding court at his assigned table. He was entertaining Jake's cousins with stories about his business success in California, his charitable work with underprivileged children, and his deep regret about missing so much of Emma's childhood. The irony was suffocating. Here was a man who had abandoned his own child, spinning tales about his devotion to helping other people's children. A man who claimed deep regret while simultaneously blaming everyone but himself for the choices that led to his absence. As dinner plates were cleared away, the DJ announced it was time for the traditional father-daughter dance. Emma's face lit up with nervous excitement as she looked toward Marcus's table. Denise watched her daughter smooth down her dress and check her hair in the reflection of a wine glass, wanting everything to be perfect for this moment she'd dreamed about since childhood. Marcus stood up with theatrical flair, buttoning his jacket and straightening his tie as if he were about to perform on Broadway. He walked to Emma with his arms outstretched, and Denise could see her daughter's eyes shine with unshed tears of happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ's voice boomed over the sound system. Please welcome the bride and her father to the dance floor for their special song. The opening notes of Butterfly Kisses filled the room, and Denise felt her heart clench. Emma had chosen this song specifically because she remembered Marcus humming it to her when she was very small, back when he still lived with them. It was one of the few genuinely sweet memories she had of her father, and Denise understood why she wanted to honor it on her wedding day. As they began to dance, Marcus leaned down to whisper something in Emma's ear that made her smile through her tears. Around the room, wedding guests dabbed at their eyes with napkins, moved by what appeared to be a touching reunion between a father and daughter who had overcome years of separation. But Denise knew better. She could see the way Marcus played to the audience, making sure his expression was visible to the wedding photographer, positioning Emma so that his best angle faced the room. This wasn't about Emma. It was about Marcus creating a moment that would make him look good in the wedding album and in the memories of everyone present. When the song ended, Marcus pulled Emma into a long hug, and over her shoulder, his eyes found Denise's across the room. There was something triumphant in his gaze, as if he'd just won a competition she hadn't even realized they were having. The DJ invited other family members to join the couple on the dance floor, and soon the space was filled with parents dancing with children, couples swaying together, and friends laughing as they attempted to keep time with the music. Denise was talking with Jake's aunt when she felt a tap on her shoulder. "May I have this dance?" She turned to find Detective Ray Castellanos, one of Emma's longtime family friends who had helped coach her soccer team when she was in middle school. Ray had been a steady presence during those difficult years after the divorce, showing up to games when Marcus didn't, helping with car repairs when Denise couldn't afford a mechanic, and generally being the kind of reliable male figure that Emma had needed. "Of course," Denise smiled, grateful for the distraction and the excuse to move away from the sidelines where she'd been watching Marcus hold court. As they danced to a slow Frank Sinatra number, Ray glanced toward where Marcus was now dancing with Stephanie. "That's him, huh? Emma's biological father?" "That's him. Seems like quite a character." Denise laughed despite herself. "That's one way to put it. Emma seems happy he's here." "She is. She's been hoping for this reunion for years. Part of me is glad she's getting some closure, even if..." Denise trailed off, not wanting to sound bitter. "Even if he hasn't earned it?" Ray had always been perceptive. It was probably what made him a good detective. "I just worry that he's going to hurt her again. He's been telling everyone tonight about what a devoted father he was, how I kept him away from her, how he's been sending support all these years. None of it's true, but Emma doesn't know that. Maybe she doesn't need to know. Maybe the truth matters less than the fact that she feels loved today." Denise considered this. Ray was probably right from Emma's perspective. But watching Marcus rewrite history while taking credit for the woman Emma had become felt like watching someone steal from her. All those years of struggle, all those sacrifices, all those nights when Emma cried because Daddy didn't call on her birthday, was she supposed to just let Marcus erase all of that with his charming smile and selective memory? The song ended, and Ray escorted her back to her table. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "everyone who actually knows Emma knows who raised her. The people who matter aren't fooled by smooth talkers." As the evening progressed, the celebration kicked into higher gear. The dance floor filled with guests of all ages. The bar stayed busy, and the photographer captured dozens of candid moments of joy and laughter. Emma and Jake looked blissfully happy, surrounded by their chosen family and friends. But Marcus continued his campaign of historical revision. During a quiet moment between songs, he commandeered the microphone from the DJ. "Excuse me, everyone," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of false humility. "I hope you don't mind if I take just a moment to say a few words about my beautiful daughter." Emma looked surprised but pleased, turning toward her father with an expectant smile. 26 years ago, when Emma was born, I knew I was holding someone special. She had this determination from the very beginning. She came into the world 3 weeks early because she was ready to get started on life. The crowd chuckled appreciatively. As she grew up, I watched her tackle every challenge with incredible courage and grace. Soccer, school, her nursing program, everything she touched, she made better. So far, so good. Denise had to admit that Marcus was a skilled speaker, and his love for Emma seemed genuine, even if his version of their family history was completely fabricated. "I know I wasn't always there the way I wanted to be," Marcus continued, his voice taking on that wounded quality that was his specialty. "Sometimes life takes you in directions you don't expect, and sometimes you have to make sacrifices that break your heart. But I never stopped loving Emma, and I never stopped being proud of her." Denise felt her jaw clench. The sacrifices that broke his heart? He'd left them voluntarily to start a new life in California with a woman he'd been seeing behind Denise's back. There had been no noble sacrifice, no heartbreaking choice. Just a selfish man who decided that responsibility was inconvenient. Today, watching Emma marry Jake, I see the incredible woman she's become, and I know that even though we lost some years, the bond between a father and daughter can never really be broken. Jake, you're getting someone extraordinary. Take care of her, because she's the most precious thing in my world. The crowd applauded warmly, and Emma wiped away tears as she mouthed, "I love you," to her father. Marcus handed the microphone back to the DJ with a satisfied smile, having successfully painted himself as the devoted father who had overcome adversity to be here for his daughter's special day. Denise's sister Rosa appeared at her elbow with a fresh glass of wine. "How are you holding up?" Rosa whispered. "I feel like I'm watching someone steal Emma's childhood and give himself credit for it. Emma knows who raised her, Denise. She knows who was there for the hard stuff." "Does she? Because right now it looks like she's buying into his version of events completely." Before Rosa could respond, Marcus appeared at their table, still glowing from his successful speech. "Denise, I hope you don't mind that I said a few words. I just felt so moved by the moment, you know? Emma looked so beautiful up there, and I wanted everyone to know how proud I am of her." "Of course," Denise managed to say. "It's her special day." "It really is. And, you know, despite everything that happened between us, I think we can both be proud of how she turned out. We did something right, didn't we?" The casual way he included himself in Emma's upbringing, as if he'd been an equal partner in raising her, made Denise's vision blur with anger. But before she could formulate a response, Marcus was already moving away, drawn by someone else who wanted to congratulate him on his touching speech. Rosa squeezed her sister's hand under the table. "Breathe," she whispered. "Just breathe. In a few hours, this will all be over, and Emma will be married to a wonderful man who actually knows how to show up for the people he loves." But as Denise watched Marcus work the room, accepting praise for being such a devoted father, she wondered if the real damage wasn't just beginning. Would Emma start to believe his version of their family history? Would she begin to see Denise as the bitter ex-wife who had kept father and daughter apart? Would Marcus's presence in her life going forward mean constantly defending the truth against his carefully crafted lies? The celebration was in full swing when Jake's college roommate David grabbed the microphone for what was supposed to be a light-hearted best man speech. The 28-year-old medical resident had clearly had a few drinks, and his opening jokes about Jake's terrible cooking and obsession with obscure medical journals had the crowd laughing. But then David's tone shifted as he looked directly at Emma. "You know, Jake told me something once that really stuck with me. He said Emma was the strongest person he'd ever met, not because she'd had an easy life, but because she'd learned early on that she could only count on herself and the people who actually showed up. He said she had this incredible ability to see through people's words and judge them by their actions instead." Denise felt a chill run down her spine. David didn't know the family dynamics, didn't understand the undercurrents of tension in the room, but his innocent observation had just highlighted exactly what made Marcus's performance so problematic. Jake said Emma taught him that love isn't about grand gestures or pretty speeches. It's about being there for the ordinary Tuesday nights when someone has the flu, or helping with calculus homework even when you're exhausted from work, or driving 40 minutes to a soccer game in the rain because you promised you'd be there. The crowd was nodding along, moved by the sentiment, but Denise could see Marcus's jaw tighten. David was unknowingly describing exactly the kind of consistent, unglamorous love that Marcus had never provided. "So here's to Emma and Jake," David concluded, raising his glass. "Two people who know that real love is about showing up, every single day, no matter what." As the crowd toasted, Denise caught Emma's eye across the room. For just a moment, her daughter's expression was thoughtful, as if David's words had triggered some deeper reflection. But then Jake spun her around on the dance floor, and the moment passed. 20 minutes later, Denise was helping herself to the wedding cake when she overheard a conversation that made her stomach drop. Marcus was talking to Patricia, Jake's mother, near the gift table. "It's such a shame," Marcus was saying, his voice heavy with manufactured regret. "I tried so hard to maintain a relationship with Emma after the divorce, but Denise was determined to punish me. She moved apartments without giving me the new address, changed Emma's school without telling me, even got a restraining order at one point. Completely unfounded, of course, but it kept me away for months while we sorted it out legally. Denise nearly choked on her cake. There had never been a restraining order. Marcus was now inventing legal proceedings that had never existed. Patricia looked uncomfortable, but was clearly trying to be polite. That must have been very difficult for you. It was heartbreaking. The worst part was knowing that Emma was being told I didn't care about her, when the truth was that I was fighting every day to be part of her life. I spent thousands on lawyers, but you know how the system is biased against fathers. This was a complete fabrication. Marcus had never hired a lawyer, never fought for custody, never made any legal effort to maintain contact with Emma. He'd simply disappeared. But I never gave up hope, Marcus continued. I knew that someday Emma would be old enough to see the truth and make her own decisions about having a relationship with me. And here we are today. She chose to have me walk her down the aisle, chose to include me in her special day. It's like all those years of heartache were worth it for this moment. Denise set down her plate with shaking hands and walked quickly toward the ladies' room, needing a moment to compose herself before she said something she'd regret. The restroom was mercifully empty, and she gripped the marble countertop, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. "Where did you go? Is everything okay?" Before she could respond, the restroom door opened and Emma walked in, her wedding dress rustling against the tile floor. "Mom, are you all right?" Rosa said you looked upset. Denise forced a smile. "I just needed a quiet moment. You know how weddings can be, so much emotion." Emma studied her mother's face in the mirror. "This is about Dad, isn't it?" The question hung in the air between them. Denise had two choices: lie to protect Emma's happiness on her wedding day, or tell the truth and risk shattering her daughter's illusions about her father. "Emma, it's your wedding day. Whatever issues I have with your father, they don't matter right now. What matters is that you're happy." "Mom." Emma's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not 8 years old anymore. I can handle the truth. What's he been saying?" Quote. Denise looked at her daughter, this strong, intelligent, compassionate woman who deserved honesty even when it was painful. "He's been telling people that I kept you away from him after the divorce, that he fought for custody, that he sent support regularly, that there were restraining orders. None of it's true, Em. You know none of it's true." Emma was quiet for a long moment, adjusting her veil in the mirror. "I know," she said softly. "You know?" "I've always known, Mom. I'm not stupid. I remember him leaving. I remember the months when we didn't know where he was. I remember you working 2 jobs and still showing up to every soccer game. I remember him promising to visit and then not showing up, or calling to cancel at the last minute." Denise felt tears prick her eyes. "Then why did you invite him? Why are you letting him tell these stories?" Emma turned to face her mother directly. "Because I needed to see if he'd changed. I needed to know if he could take responsibility for what he did, if he could acknowledge the truth about our family. And now I have my answer. Which is, he hasn't changed at all. He's still the same person who left us. Charming, convincing, and completely incapable of taking responsibility for his choices. But you know what? That's okay. Because I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing this for me." Denise wiped away a tear that had escaped, despite her efforts. "I don't understand. I invited him because I needed to prove to myself that I could be in the same room with him and not fall apart. That I could hear his lies and not be destroyed by them. That I could be polite and civil without needing his approval or validation." Emma's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "I spent years wondering if I wasn't good enough for him to stay. Today I realized that his leaving had nothing to do with me and everything to do with who he is. Oh, sweetheart. I let him walk me down the aisle because I wanted to honor the small part of me that came from him, but I'm not confused about who raised me. I'm not confused about who showed up. Jake loves me because of the person you helped me become, not because of some genetic connection to a man who contributes nothing but stories and excuses." Denise pulled Emma into a careful hug, mindful of the dress and makeup. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a pretty good teacher." They were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Ladies?" It was Jake's voice. "Is everything okay in there? People are starting to ask about the bouquet toss." "We'll be right out," Emma called back. She turned to her mother one more time. "Are you going to be okay? I know this is hard for you too." "I'm proud of you," Denise said simply. "I'm proud of the woman you've become, and I'm proud that you chose Jake. He's going to show up for you every day for the rest of your life. I know, that's why I'm marrying him." As they walked back toward the reception, Emma linked her arm through her mother's. "By the way," she said quietly, "I heard what he told Mrs. Patterson about the restraining order. That was pretty creative, even for him." Despite everything, Denise found herself laughing. Your father always did have quite an imagination. Good thing I inherited your common sense instead. The bouquet toss was a success, with Emma's college roommate Sarah catching the flowers amid cheers and laughter. The garter ceremony followed, with Jake good-naturedly playing up the tradition while his groomsmen hooted encouragement. But as the evening wound down and guests began to filter out into the parking lot, Denise noticed Marcus positioning himself near the exit, making sure to shake hands with departing guests and accept their compliments on being such a devoted father. He was working the room right until the end, cementing his narrative in people's minds. The reception was winding down when Marcus made his final power play of the evening. As guests began gathering their purses and saying their goodbyes, he approached the DJ booth with the confidence of someone who owned the place. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed through the sound system one last time, "before we wrap up this beautiful celebration, I'd like to invite everyone to join Emma, Jake, and myself for an after-party at the Riverside Inn downtown. The first round is on me. It's the least I can do to celebrate my daughter's happiness." Denise felt her blood run cold. The Riverside Inn was an upscale hotel bar that would cost a fortune to host even a small group. More importantly, this wasn't something that had been planned or discussed with Emma and Jake, who were clearly as surprised as everyone else by the announcement. She watched Emma's face carefully and saw a flicker of panic. The young couple had spent months budgeting for this wedding, calculating every expense down to the last detail. An impromptu after-party at an expensive venue wasn't in their plans, and Marcus knew it. But the guests were already responding enthusiastically, excited by the prospect of extending the celebration. Jake's college friends were particularly vocal about continuing the party, and several family members were nodding approval at Marcus's generous gesture. "That's so thoughtful of you, Mr. Thompson," said Jake's cousin Michelle. "Emma, you're so lucky to have such a generous father." Emma looked trapped. She couldn't publicly decline her father's offer without seeming ungrateful. But Denise could see the stress lines forming around her daughter's eyes. Jake moved closer to his new wife, sensing her discomfort but unsure how to navigate the situation diplomatically. Marcus basked in the praise, accepting handshakes and backpats from guests who were impressed by his spontaneous generosity. "It's Emma's special day," he said with practiced humility. "Nothing's too good for my little girl." Denise made a quick decision. She approached the small group surrounding Marcus and spoke directly to Emma. "Sweetheart, are you sure you want to extend the evening? You and Jake have that early flight tomorrow, and you've been on your feet for hours. Maybe it would be better to end on such a perfect note?" She was giving Emma an out, and her daughter seized it gratefully. "You know what? Mom's right. Jake and I are exhausted, and we still need to pack for our honeymoon. But please, everyone who wants to continue celebrating should absolutely go to the Riverside Inn. Dad, that's incredibly generous of you." Marcus's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Of course, sweetheart. The newlyweds need their rest. The invitation stands for everyone else, though." About half the remaining guests decided to take Marcus up on his offer, including most of Jake's college friends and several family members who weren't ready for the night to end. As they prepared to caravan to the hotel, Denise overheard Marcus talking to Stephanie. "This is going to cost us at least $2,000, Stephanie hissed under her breath. "We can't afford this kind of gesture right now." "It's an investment," Marcus replied quietly. "Everyone here is going to remember that I was the one who made Emma's wedding day special, that I was generous and thoughtful. It's worth every penny for the impression it makes." So even his grand gesture wasn't about Emma. It was about managing his own reputation. Denise shouldn't have been surprised, but somehow Marcus's calculations still had the power to disgust her. As the after-party group departed, the country club staff began breaking down the reception decorations. Emma and Jake were saying their final goodbyes to the remaining family members, looking tired but blissfully happy. "Thank you so much for everything, Mrs. Martinez," Jake said, pulling Denise into a warm hug. "This was perfect. Emma's been so happy all day." "She looked beautiful," Denise replied, meaning it completely. "And you two are perfect together. Take care of each other." "We will," Emma promised, embracing her mother tightly. "Thank you for handling everything with Dad so gracefully. I know it wasn't easy." "You handled it perfectly yourself. I'm proud of you." As the newlyweds headed to their hotel to pack for their Caribbean honeymoon, Denise helped Rosa and her other sister Carmen load the wedding gifts into their cars. The physical activity was welcome, after hours of emotional tension. "So, what's the verdict?" Rosa asked as they carried a large wrapped box to her trunk. "Do you think he's changed at all?" Emma said it best earlier. "He's exactly the same person he always was. Charming, manipulative, and completely self-centered. But at least now Emma sees it clearly." "That's something, I guess." Carmen, who had been quietly observing the family drama all evening, finally spoke up. "I still can't believe he told people there was a restraining order. That's not just lying. That's creating a whole fictional legal history." "He's always been creative with the truth," Denise said wearily. "The scary part is how convincing he is. If you didn't know better, you'd absolutely believe his version of events." They finished loading the cars just as Detective Ray Castellanos appeared, carrying the last of the floral centerpieces. "Thought you might want to take some of these home," he said. "They're too beautiful to just throw away." "That's sweet of you, Ray. Thank you." "How are you holding up? That was quite a performance your ex-husband put on tonight." Denise laughed tiredly. "Performance is the right word. Marcus always did love an audience. For what it's worth, I don't think many people were buying it. At least not the people who actually know Emma and know what kind of person you are." "I hope you're right." Ray helped them arrange the flowers in Rosa's car, then walked Denise to her own vehicle. "You know, I've been in law enforcement for 23 years, and I've met a lot of guys like Marcus. They're all surface and no substance. They can fool people temporarily, but the truth has a way of coming out eventually. The problem is that sometimes the temporary fooling is enough to cause real damage." "Maybe. But Emma's not fooled, and Jake's not fooled, and that's what matters. The people who really know Emma know exactly who raised her and who deserves the credit for the woman she became." As Denise drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, she reflected on the day's events. The wedding itself had been beautiful. Emma had looked radiant, Jake had been the perfect groom, and their love for each other was evident to everyone present. That was what mattered most. But Marcus's presence had cast a shadow over everything, turning what should have been a purely joyful occasion into something more complicated. His lies and manipulations had forced Denise to spend her daughter's wedding day defending truths that shouldn't have needed defending. At home, she kicked off her heels and poured herself a glass of wine, settling into her favorite chair with one of the floral centerpieces Rosa had insisted she take. The house felt very quiet after the noise and activity of the reception. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma, sent from the hotel. "Thank you for everything today, Mom. I love you so much. See you when we get back from Barbados." A second text followed immediately. "P.S. I heard what Dad told people about the restraining order. We'll need to talk about that when I get home. Some things can't be left unchallenged." Denise smiled as she read the messages. Emma was indeed not the naive young woman Marcus thought he could manipulate. She was sharp, observant, and apparently not willing to let her father's lies go completely unchallenged. Tomorrow, she would have to deal with the aftermath, the thank you notes, the gift returns, the cleanup of 100 small wedding-related details. But tonight, she could finally relax and process everything that had happened. The wedding was over. Emma was married to a good man who would treat her well. Marcus had revealed himself to be exactly what Denise had always known him to be. And somehow, despite all the drama and tension, the day had ended with the relationships that mattered most intact and stronger than ever. It wasn't the perfect drama-free wedding day she'd hoped for, but it was real and honest and ultimately successful in all the ways that counted. 3 days later, Denise was enjoying her first quiet morning since the wedding when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Patricia Chen's number, Jake's mother. "Patricia, how lovely to hear from you. I hope you had a safe trip home to Boston." "We did, thank you." Listen, Denise, I'm calling because something happened last night that I think you should know about. The concern in Patricia's voice made Denise set down her coffee cup. What's wrong? Well, you know how Marcus invited everyone to that after party at the Riverside Inn? Robert and I went along with Jake's cousins and a few other family members. It started out fine. Everyone was having a good time, sharing stories about Emma and Jake, that sort of thing. That sounds nice. It was, until Marcus had a few drinks. Then he started getting more talkative about his relationship with Emma, and some of the things he said were pretty troubling. Denise felt her stomach tighten. What kind of things? He was telling people that Emma had reached out to him years ago, begging him to be part of her life again, but that you had threatened to cut off her college funding if she maintained contact with him. He said you'd manipulated her financially to keep her away from him. The audacity of the lie left Denise momentarily speechless. Emma had received academic scholarships and worked part-time jobs to pay for college. Denise had helped when she could, but there had never been any significant college funding to threaten with. Patricia, that's completely... I know it's not true, dear. Anyone who knows you and Emma knows better. But he was very convincing, and there were people there who didn't know your family well. Jake's cousin Michelle seemed particularly affected by the story. What else did he say? Patricia hesitated. He claimed that you'd been intercepting his letters and gifts to Emma over the years. That he'd sent birthday presents and Christmas cards that you never gave her. He even said he'd set up a college fund for her that you somehow gained access to and used for yourself. Each lie was more elaborate than the last. Marcus wasn't just rewriting history anymore. He was creating an entire alternative reality where he was the wronged father, and Denise was a vindictive villain who had stolen his daughter's love through manipulation and theft. Did anyone challenge him on these stories? Your friend Ray tried to. He pointed out that if Marcus had really been sending letters and gifts, there would be postal records, canceled checks, evidence of communication attempts. But Marcus just got angry and said the system was rigged against fathers, that women like you knew how to work the legal system to cover your tracks. Denise rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. How did the evening end? Not well. Marcus got increasingly drunk and increasingly bitter. He started talking about how Emma's wedding had been stolen from him, how he should have been the one to plan it and pay for it. Stephanie finally managed to get him to leave, but not before he'd made quite a scene. After hanging up with Patricia, Denise sat in her kitchen trying to process what she'd heard. Marcus's lies were escalating beyond anything she'd expected. It was one thing to claim he'd been kept away from Emma. That was the kind of divorce-related fiction that people sometimes accepted without question. But accusing her of theft and financial manipulation crossed into territory that could actually damage her reputation in the community. Her phone rang again. This time, it was Detective Ray. Denise, I wanted to follow up on what happened at the Riverside Inn the other night. Have you talked to Patricia Chen? She just called. Ray, this is getting out of hand. He's not just lying about the past anymore. He's accusing me of actual crimes. That's what concerns me. Look, I've been thinking about this situation, and I think you need to be prepared for the possibility that Marcus might try to escalate things further. Guys like him don't usually stop at just telling stories. What do you mean? He's painted himself into a corner with these lies. If people start asking for proof of his claims, evidence of the letters he supposedly sent, records of this college fund he mentioned, he's going to have to either admit he was lying or double down with even bigger lies. And in my experience, guys like Marcus always double down. Ray's words stayed with Denise throughout the morning. She found herself going through old documents, organizing the actual records of Emma's childhood, report cards that showed Denise as the only parent contact, medical records with only her signature, school forms that listed Marcus's address as unknown year after year. At noon, her sister Rosa called with more disturbing news. I just got off the phone with my friend Maria. You remember, she works at the bank downtown? She said Marcus came in yesterday asking questions about your accounts. My accounts? What kind of questions? He told her he was Emma's father and that he was concerned about some financial irregularities related to his daughter's upbringing. He wanted to know if there had been any large deposits or unusual activity in your accounts over the past few years. Please tell me she didn't give him any information. Of course not. She's not allowed to, and she knows you well enough to know something was fishy. But Denise, he's actively investigating you now. This isn't just drunken storytelling anymore. Denise felt a chill run down her spine. Marcus was actually trying to find evidence to support his fabricated narrative, or perhaps to create evidence where none existed. That afternoon, she decided to take proactive action. She called her old boss, attorney Jennifer Walsh, who had employed her as a paralegal for 15 years. Jennifer, I need some advice about a situation with my ex-husband. Marcus Thompson? I thought he was out of the picture. He was, until Emma's wedding. Now he's telling people I embezzled money from Emma's college fund and intercepted gifts he sent her. He's even been to the bank asking questions about my accounts. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Denise, you need to document everything. Every conversation, every lie, every attempt to access information about you. If he's making accusations of financial crimes, this could become a legal issue very quickly. Do you really think he'd go that far? I think a man who would lie about restraining orders and college funds is capable of just about anything. You need to protect yourself. Following Jennifer's advice, Denise spent the rest of the afternoon creating a detailed timeline of Marcus's abandonment and subsequent absence from Emma's life. She gathered bank records, tax returns, and school documents that proved she had been Emma's sole support system for 18 years. As she worked, she couldn't help but feel a mixture of anger and sadness. Even after Emma's wedding was over, even after her daughter was safely married and on her honeymoon, Marcus was still finding ways to poison the well, to make Denise's life complicated and stressful. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Michelle Chen, Jake's cousin. Could we talk? I heard some things at the after-party that don't match what I know about you and Emma. I think there might be some confusion that needs clearing up. At least someone was starting to question Marcus's stories. Denise texted back, Of course, would you like to meet for coffee tomorrow? As the sun set on what should have been a peaceful post-wedding recovery day, Denise realized that Marcus's return to their lives was far from over. The wedding had been just the beginning of what was shaping up to be a much larger battle, one where her reputation, her relationships, and possibly even her financial security were at stake. She poured herself another glass of wine and sat down to call Jennifer Walsh back. If Marcus wanted to escalate this conflict, she needed to be prepared with more than just the truth. She needed legal protection, documented evidence, and a strategy for defending herself against accusations that were becoming more serious by the day. The quiet life she'd built for herself and Emma was under attack, and Marcus had apparently decided that if he couldn't rewrite the past to his satisfaction, he would try to destroy the present instead. 2 weeks after Emma's wedding, Denise was meeting with Michelle Chen at the local Starbucks when her phone rang with an unknown Connecticut number. She let it go to voicemail, focusing instead on Michelle's questions about the discrepancies she'd noticed in Marcus's stories. The thing that bothered me most, Michelle was saying, was when he claimed you'd used Emma's college fund for yourself. But I remember Jake telling us that Emma worked 3 jobs to pay for nursing school and graduated debt-free because of her academic scholarships and her own savings. That's exactly right. Emma was incredibly motivated and hardworking. I helped when I could, but she earned most of what she needed through her own efforts. I figured as much, and the story about intercepting gifts and letters just seemed so elaborate. If someone really wanted to stay in contact with their child, there are dozens of ways to do it that can't be blocked by the other parent. Denise was grateful that at least one person was thinking critically about Marcus's claims. They talked for another 20 minutes, with Michelle apologizing for initially believing some of the stories and promising to set the record straight with other family members who might have been misled. After Michelle left, Denise checked her voicemail. The message made her blood run cold. Mrs. Martinez, this is Sergeant Williams with the Connecticut State Police Financial Crimes Unit. We've received a complaint regarding possible misappropriation of funds involving a minor child's education account. Please call me back at your earliest convenience to discuss this matter. Her hands shaking, Denise immediately called Jennifer Walsh. He actually filed a police report, Jennifer said after Denise played the voicemail. I was hoping he was just making empty threats, but apparently he's committed to this narrative. What do I do? First, don't panic. False accusations happen, and the police are trained to investigate these claims thoroughly. Second, gather every document you have: bank statements, tax returns, school records, employment history, everything that shows your financial situation during Emma's childhood and education. Should I call them back right away? Yes, but not alone. I'm coming with you as your attorney. Don't say anything to the police without me present. That evening, as Denise organized financial documents at her kitchen table, Rosa arrived with takeout dinner and moral support. I can't believe he's doing this, Rosa said, watching her sister sort through years of paperwork. What kind of person files false police reports against their ex-wife? The kind of person who's painted himself into a corner with his lies and can't find a way out, Denise replied wearily. Ray warned me this might happen. Her phone rang again. This time it was Emma, calling from her honeymoon in Barbados. Mom, Jake's cousin Michelle just called us. She said Dad filed some kind of police report against you. What's going on? Denise closed her eyes, not wanting to burden Emma with this drama during her honeymoon. It's just a misunderstanding, sweetheart. Your father has been telling some stories that don't match reality, and now he's trying to make them seem more credible. Mom, tell me the truth. What is he accusing you of? So Denise explained everything. The escalating lies at the after-party, the bank inquiries, and now the police complaint about misappropriated education funds. Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steel. We're coming home. Absolutely not. You're on your honeymoon. This will all be resolved by the time you get back. Mom, he's attacking you with lies, and I'm not going to sit on a beach while that happens. Jake agrees. We're catching the next flight out. Emma? No arguments. You were there for me every single day of my life. I'm going to be there for you. 3 days later, Denise sat in the Connecticut State Police Station with Jennifer Walsh, facing Sergeant Williams across a metal desk. The officer was professional but thorough, asking detailed questions about Emma's education expenses, Denise's financial history, and any communication with Marcus over the years. Mr. Thompson claims that he established a college fund for his daughter in 2010 and that you somehow gained access to this account and used the money for personal expenses, Sergeant Williams said, consulting his notes. That's completely false, Denise replied calmly. I can provide you with Emma's complete academic records, her scholarship documentation, and her work history. She funded her own education through merit scholarships and part-time employment. Jennifer placed a thick folder on the desk. Sergeant, we've prepared a comprehensive financial history for Mrs. Martinez covering the relevant time period. You'll find bank statements, tax returns, employment records, and school documents that clearly show Emma Thompson Martinez's educational expenses were covered by scholarships and her own earnings. What about this college fund Mr. Thompson mentions? We'd like to see evidence that such a fund ever existed, Jennifer replied smoothly. Bank records, contribution statements, account numbers, any documentation Mr. Thompson can provide to support his claim. Sergeant Williams made a note. We've requested that information from Mr. Thompson. So far, he hasn't been able to provide specific account details. The interview continued for another hour, with Denise providing clear, documented answers to every question. When it was over, Sergeant Williams walked them to the lobby. Mrs. Martinez, I want you to know that we take all complaints seriously, but we also investigate them thoroughly. Based on what I've seen today and the lack of supporting documentation from Mr. Thompson, I suspect this matter will be resolved quickly. Outside the police station, Emma and Jake were waiting in the parking lot. Emma immediately wrapped her mother in a fierce hug. How did it go? I think it went well. The truth has a way of speaking for itself when you have documentation to back it up. Over dinner that night, Emma made an announcement that surprised everyone. I've been thinking about this whole situation, and I've decided that I need to take a more active role in setting the record straight about Dad's claims. What do you mean? Denise asked. I'm going to write a detailed letter to everyone who was at the wedding and the after-party. I'm going to explain exactly what my childhood was like, who raised me, who paid for what, and who was actually present for the important moments. People deserve to know the truth. Emma, you don't need to do that. This will blow over. No, Mom. He's counting on me staying quiet, on not wanting to cause family drama or hurt his feelings. but I'm done protecting his reputation at the expense of yours. Everyone should know who the real parent was in this situation. Emma's letter was thorough, specific, and devastating. She detailed Marcus's abandonment, the years of silence, her mother's sacrifices, and the reality of growing up with a single parent who worked multiple jobs to provide for her daughter's needs and dreams. She included specific examples that contradicted every major lie Marcus had told, and she made it clear that she remembered everything: the missed birthdays, the broken promises, and the long stretches of time when they had no idea where he was living. The letter had exactly the effect Emma intended. Within days, Denise received calls from wedding guests apologizing for believing Marcus's stories. Patricia Chen called to say that Jake's entire family now understood the real situation. Even some of Marcus's relatives reached out to express their embarrassment about his behavior. 2 weeks later, Sergeant Williams called with the news Denise had been expecting. "Mrs. Martinez, we've completed our investigation into Mr. Thompson's complaint. We found no evidence to support his allegations, and he's been unable to provide documentation for any of the claims he made. The case is being closed with no charges filed." The relief was overwhelming, but it was tempered by the knowledge that Marcus had been willing to go to extraordinary lengths to try to destroy her reputation and credibility. Emma and Jake postponed their official honeymoon until the legal matter was resolved, but once it was over, they planned a small celebration at Denise's house. As they sat on the back porch, watching the sunset, Emma raised her glass. "To my mom, who taught me that character is what you do when no one is watching, that love is about showing up every day, and that the truth is always stronger than lies, even when it takes time for people to see it." "To Denise," Jake added, "who raised the most incredible woman I've ever met, and who handled this whole situation with more grace than anyone should have to." Denise felt tears in her eyes as she looked at her daughter and son-in-law, two people who understood that family isn't about biology or genetics, but about the people who choose to love you and support you through both good times and difficult ones. Marcus never apologized for the false police report or the lies he'd spread. Stephanie filed for divorce 3 months later, apparently having decided that his character issues extended beyond his treatment of his first family. He moved back to California, where Denise hoped he would stay. Emma and Jake bought a house 6 blocks away from Denise's, close enough for Sunday dinners and babysitting duties when their first child arrived 2 years later. Their son had Jake's gentle nature and Emma's determination, and he called Denise Grammy, the title she'd earned through 18 years of bedtime stories, scraped knee kisses, and unconditional love. Sometimes the truth takes time to emerge, but it always does. And sometimes the people who try hardest to rewrite history end up revealing exactly who they really are. Not through their words, but through their actions when they think no one is paying attention. Denise had spent years worrying that Emma might never see Marcus clearly, but her daughter had been watching and learning all along. The wedding had simply been Emma's way of giving her father one final chance to be the man she'd hoped he could be. When he failed that test, Emma knew exactly where her real family was. And it had nothing to do with the man who'd walked her down the aisle, and everything to do with the woman who'd walked beside her through every challenge life had brought their way. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.